Hello YouTube, this is Captain Omni, and I'm coming at you with another edition of How I'd Write It, and this is, as you can tell by the title, New 52 Shazam. Now, basically how I would handle this is, like, if I was writing for DC and under the stipulation of, no, you cannot call him Captain Marvel, because, as all of you would know, I prefer Captain Marvel for the name. To me, at this point, Shazam is a serviceable name, I suppose, but ultimately he's still always going to be Captain Marvel to me, no matter what. But that got me thinking, why don't DC has never been, even with the name change to supposedly market him better, they still haven't been serious about him. They really haven't. So this is going to be my idea for how to make him, essentially solve the issue once and for all, because even now, currently in the comics, he still doesn't have a superhero name, because, well, they're like, oh, he says it and he changes back. I'm like, okay, he's essentially the superhero and that's it. There is no name or legacy for Captain Marvel here, or Billy Batson. So this is going to be my way of changing that. First of all, the character himself, Billy Batson, would very much be inspired by the movie version. Namely, the idea that he is a foster kid who, doesn't believe he belongs in foster care. I would go with the idea that, like the movie presented, that, he believes that, he and his mother were separated when he was young, and, she's probably trying to find him, so it's like, and because of this, he's always, often running away, living on the streets, that kind of thing. So basically, he would be more jaded than a usual tradition, take on Billy Batson, in the sense of, he's seen people at their worst, but at the same time, he also knows that, they're just people that need help. There are people that, aren't good out there, that life's dealt a bad hand to, and there's no reason to not help them. He would be slightly jaded, but at the same time, he would very much be, very generous, giving, and just loving to people, because, he's been on the receiving end, and anything he can do to help people, not have it so bad, that would be his, have it just a little bit better than what they currently do. He would do anything he could to do that, which, is very much like the movie version. Now, moving on, this would, to the big thing here, where does he get his powers here? Some of you are thinking, oh, Wizard Shazam, right? No, not the Wizard Shazam. I would actually be going with an idea from the original 1970s Captain Marvel show, where he was chosen directly by Solomon, Hercules, Achilles, Atlas, and Achilles, Zeus, Atlas, and Mercury to be, Captain Marvel, or in this case, Shazam. The basic idea here is, there has been, all the gods across the earthly pantheons have decided that, there has to be a wizard to command the power of the gods to fight threats to the mortal realm, from the 7 deadly sins or anything else. I would not get rid of the original wizard, Jedediah of Canaan. Rather, I would be he was the first. Then he passed that 7,000. He was the first 7,000 years ago. Then he would pass that on to Teth Adam, who would have the power of the Egyptian gods. And of course, we know how things shake out with Black Adam. So all the gods we have to be more careful with this. We've had one good champion, we've had a not so good champion, who was turned to the dark side, so to speak. But so we have to be very careful about this with our next choice. So 1,000 years go by, and the seals on the 7 deadly sins are starting to weaken. And so they eventually choose, the spirit of Solomon eventually chooses Billy Batson, because he's like, this boy, I've kept an eye on him. He is the one we need because time is running out. He's still raw, but his heart is there. And, like, all right, fine. We're trusting you, Solomon. Like, well, so yeah, Solomon is basically the reason Solomon is because the original 70s Captain Marvel show, they kind of designed Solomon to look almost like a dead ringer for the wizard Shazam. So it's like, basically cut out the middleman. Like, basically Billy is Shazam. He gets the powers directly from the gods here. And, he can say his name as much as he wants. He can, as long as he wants to transform, he says Shazam, boom, he can, again, it's if he wants to transform. Again, that's a little clunkier than, like, he says it transforms, no problem, but still at the same time, like, again, this is if I was writing under the stipulation of he can't be Captain Marvel, that he has to be Shazam. So yeah, next up, going a little further, I would actually show, before I go into anything else, to clarify, yes, this Billy would be equal to Superman in pretty much most respects, like strength, speed, etc. So yeah, but anyway, just getting that out there. Well, what follows is, I bet you're wondering, well, what about the Marvel family, or Shazam family, as they're calling them now? Well, Freddy would still be, his foster brother, and he would, basically what happened here is, I would actually do it where he's not automatically handicapped. He doesn't need the crutches or crutch at first, but what happened is, he would get into an accident, and Billy would, like, plead with the gods, try to save him, and, like, they tell him, like, okay, there is a chance, you must choose, you must, give him powers, like, you must search his feelings, search his heart and see if he deserves it. If he does, he will get the powers. It's like, you're, technically speaking, you're the wizard, you can do this, you have the power to choose here, and, like, so Billy, basically they tell Billy, you gotta make a call on the field here. So, Billy does so, and, Freddy becomes, becomes a superhero, like, and he actually gets different gods, and his own superhero name and word, which is Zam, which is spelled Zsaahmm. Now, which is kind of like a take on Captain Marvel Jr. It sounds like a shortened version of Shazam, but it's, he's fully powered here, which to the point, which another thing, there is no power because he's getting different gods. It eliminates the idea that they all get drained, their powers get drained when they both of them transform. It's like, I hate that idea. I hate it. I really do hate it. It's like, it's stupid. It wasn't a thing in the Golden Age or even the pre-Crisis era. And it's a stupid addition. And which brings us back up to Mary Bromfield, not Batson, Bromfield. And you're thinking, oh, you're not making him his sister, his biological sister. Oh no, Mary would be his half sister here, because as they've established in the New 52 and movie version, Billy's dad is kind of a dirtbag. So the idea that they're half siblings would actually have her be a year younger than Billy. Like, basically, like, his dad, mom, like, yeah, he might have married Billy's mom, but that was more because, well, all right, it's kind of like, whereas with Mary's mom, it was kind of it's like, oh yeah, and then kind of like double two-timing both ladies. Again, they established the guy's kind of a dirt bag. So what would follow is, when they find out, that they're siblings, and basically what happened is Mary ends up being held hostage by IBAC. And what happened is, Billy would have to there's only one way to do it, and he and to save her from what's coming, what's happening, and something Iback doesn't expect, and that would be he gives her powers, which would be her original gods, and her word would be her original goddesses, that had powered her. So again, different power source from the gods. So exactly the same power. Just as strong as just as strong as Billy and Freddy are, and her name and word would be Mazah, not Mazaz, Mazah. I get kind of like the hard M sound because Mary Marvel, kind of trying to preserve that a little bit, because I would still, you might think, why not just call her Mary Marvel? Well, she'd kind of be the duck out at that point. Now what would happen? Now I bet you're wondering, okay, how would I do the the new Marvel family? And don't get me wrong, I like the new Marvel family, or Shazam family as they're being called now. But the idea here is the basically Darla Dudley, Pedro Pena, and Eugene Choi would end up being caught up in a battle that ends up teleporting Billy's foster family and house into the Rock of Eternity. At which point, it's like they end up, the gods are like, Billy pleads with the gods, I need help here. Someone, because him, Mary, and Fred are being completely taken back by Blaze and Satanus, who are still the kids of the original champion of the original Shazam here. So the idea here is because, and keep in mind, if you think I'm powering them up too much, I'm like, oh no, these guys are that powerful. So the gods end up, Solomon's like, well, what do we do? Okay, what's convenient? The gods are like, so they choose the kids that are closest to Billy, that Billy is friends with, and that would be Eugene, Pedro, and Darla, and they end up getting the powers, different gods, and their names I would actually go with more of a theme here. Pedro would be Thunder, because he's Pedro would be Thunder, Darla would be Bolt, and Eugene would be Charge, like Thunderbolt and Charge, kind of like not necessarily based on their which again would be actually be based on their not necessarily would be based on their words and names here of their gods that would give the powers. So not necessarily spelled the same, obviously, but it would still follow the 6-letter word traditionally, but 6-letter magic word tradition, but that's kind of how they would sound here. So anyway, that's kind of just all I have for this. Again, it's a little short, but again, this would be kind of like how I would try to introduce a more stable naming convention and kind of take on the Captain Marvel mythos. Mostly because I really do feel like DC really doesn't care enough to really try to make the whole name change stick and be interesting. I really don't. And this is my idea, if I was given the reins, how I'd do it. To try to keep some of that classic of a feel to it. So anyway, this has been Captain Omni, signing off.